G'day, chaps, is I, Clumpbutcher139. Batman the Telltale series was an overall solid, if different take on The Dark Knight that really made you feel like Bruce Wayne. With unique takes on all of its characters, including a completely original main villain and great iterations of both the Penguin and Two-Face, Telltale cemented their Batman as one to remember for the ages, at the unfortunate cost of that all-too-common Telltale failing point. Batman Telltale, like most Telltale games, doesn't give you as much agency as it might appear. Sure, some of your choices might make a cutscene or two go a certain way, but for the most part, the experience is incredibly streamlined, to the point where only a single choice really impacts how the story unfolds. This is ultimately okay, because the story unfolding is still amazing, and the unimpactful choices still feel like they mean something even when they ultimately don't. But it's clear that they could have done more. Telltale as a whole can always do more. But the problem with choose-your-own-adventure games is that as soon as you do try to do more, your scope goes from 40 pages all the way to 400 with just the introduction of one new dialogue box. So what happens when they're fine with that kind of scope problem? Throw any sense of keeping things simple out the window, and essentially just say, screw it, and write one of the most faithful, yet also antithetical stories to the source material imaginable. You get quite possibly the greatest, most unique, and most unsung Batman story ever. You get Batman, the Enemy Within. Play it. I'll wait. The Enemy Within is a completely different monster compared to the Telltale series. It is one of the strangest, yet most emotional and heart-wrenching stories The Dark Knight has ever faced. Telltale 1 was a solid, if somewhat safe endeavor. While it took its own liberties with the characters, even creating an original villain in Lady Arkham, it all still very clearly felt like Batman. A Batman who, despite being a bit young and inexperienced with the true inner workings of Gotham's underworld, was still always on top of everything despite the left hooks thrown his way. He was always able to think his way out of a situation without something catastrophic going down. His enemies were predictable because they were ones we've seen before. Catwoman is gonna be out for herself and probably betray us, no matter how close we get. Penguin is gonna take every opportunity to somehow screw us over because he hates our guts. And Harvey is gonna be emotionally unstable and therefore susceptible to psychological manipulation. It's all stuff we've seen before, just with a new coat of paint. That coat of paint is very shiny and very pretty, but it still costs the same as the regular stuff that you could just find at Home Depot. The Enemy Within looked at all of this and said, I like the cut of your jib, kid. You got a good thing going. Now watch a master work. And oh so casually took every single character on a complete left turn and made every single choice in the game the hardest decision you've ever made. They made the Riddler an actual threat and genuinely scary while still upholding his riddle gimmick. They made you question if Amanda Waller might actually be a good guy for once while still making her the most hateable bitch in DC history. They made Harley Quinn into a legitimate criminal mastermind who actually poses a challenge while keeping her completely unrelated to the Joker. They almost made Bane interesting again. They make you wonder if Bruce being Batman is actually a good thing, question his moral code, and genuinely consider hanging up the cowl. They turned Bruce Wayne into a criminal conspirator, for real this time, and have him push so many boundaries of how far he's willing to go in the pursuit of justice. They make you best friends with the mother-frickin' Joker, and make you believe it too. all intertwined with a constant stream of choices that will seemingly always impact your relationships with these various characters and make you pull your hair out in frustration, genuinely wondering if you did the right thing by the end. I mentioned how in Season 1, it never really felt like my choices mattered as much as they were hyped up to be. Like, given the choice to save Harvey or Selina in Chapter 2. Both live either way, and Harvey becomes Two-Face either way, just with or without the scarring. Whether or not you sleep with Selina in Chapter 3, Harvey hates your guts because he's able to read the room of a half-naked guy in his girlfriend's apartment. Revealing your identity to Lady Arkham or not in the finale, either Bruce is scarred or Alfred, neither of which are in a life-threatening way, and either way the villain is defeated. The only choice that it felt like actually impacted something in a big way was the final choice of Chapter 4, going after Harvey or Oswald. You end up facing one right then as Batman and the other in Chapter 5 as Bruce, leading to an intense emotional turmoil one way or the other. And so Chapter 4 will end either with Wayne Manor burning down if you went after Oswald, or all of Wayne Tech's systems corrupted if you went after Harvey. It's impactful either way because it gives a completely different set of events between the last two chapters, but even then, doesn't mean much in the grand scheme of the game. You still end up taking out two of the big villains within those two chapters, and the rest of Chapter 5 plays out completely uninterrupted because of it. So even when the choice mattered, it didn't actually change anything in the long run. In contrast, every single chapter of The Enemy Within has at least one big choice that impacts the story more than the final big choice of Telltale 1. It is seriously unbelievable how powerful they made the choices in Enemy Within, all the way down to the most minute of dialogue boxes. Every single scene had me on the edge of my seat, constantly leaving me wondering if I was making the right choice or somehow screwing it up, just hoping I wouldn't misinterpret the dialogue options and accidentally end up saying something wrong. There is no such thing as downtime in The Enemy Within. Every single dialogue choice feels like a life or death scenario, and I absolutely loved it. Because it means that by the time they actually get down to those big gut punches, the choices that there's no coming back from that will decide the fate of your story, they end up hitting even harder. Every single chapter has multiple of these choices on top of that, and many of them have time limits like the regular dialogue boxes, meaning you need to uncertainly choose something that may or may not have massive ramifications on the rest of your playthrough on a whim, and are then left hanging on the fate of your choice for who knows how long. That feeling of uncertainty over the fate of either Oswald or Harvey in Chapter 4 of Telltale 1 is present throughout the entirety of Enemy Within, leading to the most anxiety-inducing Batman story I have ever witnessed. You will constantly be on edge throughout The Enemy Within. Be it because you think you might blow your cover with a single bad dialogue box, or ruin your relationship with one character to preserve another one, or just simply not know the consequences of your actions until an entire chapter later. It's an ever-evolving process that never ceases. Because rather than needing to play different scenes based on the choices you made, thus bloating the runtime and scope significantly, The Enemy Within relies on your character relationships to build its choices and branches. Your choices don't necessarily impact the story, but rather how the various characters in said story will play it out. Will you keep this friendship in Chapter 1 all the way to Chapter 5? Or will you make an irreversible mistake in Chapter 3 and completely ruin it? You won't know until you accidentally make that mistake. This train only has one stop: the endgame. How many passengers you keep on board versus thrown out of the car and onto the rails is entirely up to you. Or for those of you that didn't listen and still haven't played the game yet, and are instead getting your first experience from me, it's up to me. The rest of this video, I'll walk you through my playthrough and highlight everything that made this absolute masterpiece of subversive storytelling work so well, chapter by chapter.
Hey, if I can cut in real quick, Clown, I didn't mean to interrupt your video, but I wanted to add a couple stray thoughts to this game, if you don't mind. Not just about the Riddler, but about the game as a whole. I genuinely adore this underrated game, and it still breaks me every time I play it.
Oh my gosh, it's fellow Batman creator and The Enemy Within's biggest fan, Arkham Analysis, who totally showed up as a surprise because you totally didn't see the collaborator thing, right? Right? Yeah, that's what I thought. She absolutely adores this game and has been hounding me to talk about it ever since we collabed on the Family Feud video back in October. So she'll have some thoughts about the game, as well as some commentary on the paths that I didn't end up taking in my playthrough, sprinkled in every once in a while to give a bit of extra insight that I might have missed. Cool? Cool. Then let's finally get this review started with Chapter 1, The Enigma. As I'm sure you could guess from the title card, Chapter 1 follows Batman's intellectual superior, the one and only Edward Nygma, the Riddler, and more importantly, one of the greatest interpretations of the character I have ever seen.
Stop me if you've heard this one before.
Chapter 1 honestly serves as a fantastic standalone story that could completely act as its own thing, setting itself a few months after the events of Telltale 1, and aside from a few remarks from some characters, doesn't do too much to reference that first game. It sets up events for later chapters to pick up on, but for a majority of its runtime, easily acts as its own confined story with a start and end. The Riddler has redescended upon Gotham. After decades in the wind, he's returned to make his mark and show Gotham what they've been missing out on. That's right, I said return. In this continuity, the Riddler was around even before Bruce was born, terrorizing Gotham's citizens as one of the first costume supervillains, being considered so powerful that the various sanctions of the mob even gave him his own territory to operate out of. And when he re-emerges, I can completely understand why.
Gotham's criminals have become zealots and thugs in cheap suits. And you, I've come home to find a wannabe in my chair.
This dude is more than just a smart guy in green spandex painting everything in green question marks. He is a genius-level psychopath that not only puts Batman's brains to the test, but also actually puts up a fight without a giant mech suit.
You must think you're so special. You're not the first hero I've put down.
Just look at this man, who, by the way, is nearly as old as Alfred, casually going hand-to-hand with prime-age Batman by himself. I need to learn this man's workout regimen. And that's not even mentioning his puzzles. Eddie really took heavy inspiration from Jigsaw for some of his riddles, casually making elaborate multi-step death traps that you could absolutely solve if you're willing to pay the price.
You're completely insane!
No, I don't believe that's it.
The price tags including, but not limited to, slicing off your fingers with buzzsaws, burning you alive in an oven, blowing out your eardrums with ultrasonic bursts to the point of a brain hemorrhage, fun stuff like that. I think the best way to compare him is a combination of the Arkham version and the Matt Reeves version. He is an absolute psychopath who loves torturing and killing people who he thinks deserve it, because he's taken on a bit of a vigilante role in this universe, but is also just so disappointed when they don't play along, so gets all giddy when someone actually tries to solve one of his riddles, because it means that he's one step closer to not only proving that he was able to best them not just by killing them, but also outsmarting them as the smartest man in the room. He still has that all too familiar superiority complex, believing that his plan is so foolproof that he can leave behind clues and the police still won't be able to stop him.
We'll catch you. The agency, they'll find... I shouldn't have to remind you that you've been chasing me for years. And I've always been 2 steps ahead.
But he's also unbelievably thick and twisted in the head, finding so much joy in his failed test subjects and finding new ways to kill them each time. And what's even crazier is that for most of the game, he's genuinely right that he's the smarter man. Most other Riddlers have a common theme where they think they're 10 steps ahead at all times, but Batman always sees all 10 steps ahead of the time and solves his riddles with no effort, easily putting a stop to his crime. This Riddler, by contrast, is 10 steps ahead and wants you to know it.
You must be really up against the ropes to want that government scum in your corner.
Even when it feels like you're starting to get some ground on Eddie and might be close to throwing a wrench in his plan, he reveals a new twist that's been a part of his plan since the very beginning that you're only now taking account of. It is truly one of the scariest Riddlers I have ever seen, because it seems like he's taken a page out of Batman's book and has a contingency plan for everything. And every time that he pulls some new sheet of wool over your eyes, you're put in a terrifying position of how to get through it. When you find his hideout, he traps you inside of it, turning it into a death trap that's already claimed a victim before you even got there. When you have an idea of how to solve his escape room, you learn that the only way to do it is to potentially set yourself on fire in one of his death boxes. When you finally have him cornered with nowhere to run on a boat, he captures 3 agents and gets ready to kill them off if you don't answer his riddles. When you learn how his tech works, you discover that there's no easy way to counter it, and within a few hours it will be used to casually wipe out an entire team of agents in seconds. And when you easily solve his first puzzle box, he uses it to kill one of your most valuable allies.
We really made a difference, didn't we, Batman?
Lucius! Lucius! No!
Yes, within the first chapter of the game, they flat out kill Lucius Fox. You know, the tech guy who's able to decipher hidden messages and is always on call to help Batman 24/7, dead, within the first half of chapter 1 of this 5-chapter story. The fact that they had the balls to do it, and the fact that it wasn't just thrown in for shock value either, it pushes the story forward, comes back around in a meaningful way towards the end, and it really pushes the personal investment Bruce has in this story. He already wanted to take down Riddler for being a madman that kills people, but now it's personal.
So sorry, really. It's such a shame. At least he went out with a bang, right?
By the end of the chapter, we never really gain an edge on Riddler. It's a constant uphill battle that keeps showing you new peaks every time you think you've reached the summit. And during that final encounter, you're forced to play along with his game, because he has 3 hostages and a very itchy trigger finger. The problem is that no matter how you play, you still lose.
I designed this for you, Batman. The hero who doesn't have to compromise will die knowing he couldn't save everyone.
Do you answer correctly and save the 2 hostages in instant death boxes? Then you and the 3rd hostage will be blasted by an ultrasonic pulse that shatters your eardrums and eventually leads to brain damage. Do you put her at risk, hurting her more and more with each blast? Or answer wrong and instantly sacrifice one of the other hostages? It's a terrifying final act that just cemented how twisted, evil, and genius this Riddler is. he found a way to make it impossible for Batman to win. And by the end of the encounter, he really doesn't. Either two of the agents will be dead, or the third will be permanently traumatized and deaf. Sure, he's able to take Riddler down and defeat him, with quite possibly the greatest QuickTime prompt ever created, but there was a cost.
Well, congratulations, Batman. You managed, even in my twisted game, to keep everyone alive. But at what cost?
A cost that could have been avoided if he had just been smarter and not underestimated Edward.
Agent Avestus suffered, so no one had to die. That can't sit well with you.
And unfortunately, this is the end of the Riddler in this game, as after defeating him, a mysterious figure injects him with a serum of various lethal painkillers, killing him instantly.
They broke the pact. The pact.
But don't worry, even though he's not here physically, he's not gone for good. He never is. The chapter ends in the only way it possibly could, with the one and only Amanda Waller taking control of a situation that she has absolutely no control over and hanging a giant threat in front of us, forcing Batman to work for her for the rest of the game.
You and I will be working together very closely. Bruce Wayne.
By God, what a reintroduction to this world. Just when it seems like things are getting back on track for Batman and for Gotham as a whole, out of the shadows rise these terrible threats from the past, rearing their ugly heads and once again making life a living hell for Bruce.
Like Clown Puncher said, this is one of the best interpretations of the Riddler I have ever seen. He's probably my second favorite, barely behind the Arkham one. The Telltale Riddler really stands out to me. He's much older than the Riddler we're used to seeing in TV shows, comics, and video games. And there's a unique, wiser edge to him that suggests he's been through a lot. This makes him feel like a more layered, vulnerable villain, unlike I've ever seen before. Telltale does such a great job reimagining characters in a fresh light, which feels incredibly refreshing in an era where originality can seem scarce. Not to mention, the voice actor brings this really steady confidence to his performance, especially compared to the quick, more hyper take we get from Wally Wingert in the Arkham games.
But I don't forget. That's the thing about having a mind like mine. You remember everything.
This Riddler takes his time. He actually thinks before he speaks, like he's always in control and already knows what's going to happen next, like he's playing chess and everybody else is still learning the rules. I also want to point out one of my all-time favorite scenes in this entire season, with Batman and Gordon confront him in Chapter 1. At first, Riddler puts on this smug, confident facade, but the more the scene goes on, the more you can feel the cracks start to show. You can tell he is terrified of what he's becoming, and he's desperate to pin the blame on the agency, like it's the only thing keeping him from fully falling apart. And honestly, that vulnerability we get from him, just for a few moments, is so valuable because we almost never get to see this side of Riddler at all in media. He even manages to make Gordon start to doubt Batman, which is wild. I just think it's just a fantastic scene overall, so well acted and just well written. However, I do think they cut his story a bit short, killing him off way too early in the game. A flashback with him in the pack would have been perfect to really showcase his connection with Bane, Freeze, and even Catwoman, especially since they speak so highly of him in Chapter 2. Regardless, this take on Riddler was such a strong opener for this game, and probably is my second favorite episode in the entire season.
As its own standalone Batman story, Chapter 1 is honestly perfect. While there are obviously some hanging plot threads, it could have worked all on its own as an independent project. And despite that, we've still got 4 more chapters to go, and they somehow only get more and more insane from here. The choices you were asked to make in this chapter were difficult, I'm sure, and you were pushing some limits at times with how demented Riddler was able to get. They're nothing compared to how far you're pushed through the rest of the enemy within. Chapter 2, The Pact, is probably the weakest chapter of the game, but even still is able to set up so many different intertwining plot threads, introduce so many characters, and still forces you to make a bunch of seriously difficult choices. It just kinda drags its feet in some areas while also accelerating past some others rather inconsistently. But the things that it gets right, whoo boy did it get them right.
Suit yourself. I'ma pretend I ain't offended.
The chapter begins with Batman getting into his first ever scrap with Bane, who, if you didn't already know, is voiced by the same actor as in Arkham Origins, J.B. Blanc.
Who are you? A nightmare. Much like yourself. But you can call me Bane.
He absolutely kills it once again. And by it, I mean both the performance and Batman. He gives Bruce a seriously rough time, throwing him around like even more of a ragdoll than he did in Origins. It's a great introduction to the character and the chapter as a whole, because it further increases the already massive stakes. You knew Riddler was dangerous and that he had friends, but you didn't realize that just a single one of them would be this friggin' powerful. It's a solid introduction and exactly what we've come to expect from Bane, but unfortunately he does not follow it up as great.
I promised my men a hell of a battle if ever I faced you. And I'd hate to disappoint them.
This is far from my favorite Bane. Origins still clears that bar by a kilomile, but he's overall good. Definitely not as egregious as most other interpretations of the character, but also doesn't really get enough screen time to flesh him out as much as I would have liked. He's heavily carried by the performance from J.B. Blanc. Honestly, if it was anyone else, I probably wouldn't have liked him as much. Blanc has kinda cemented himself as the Kevin Conroy of Bane voices for me. He's that good.
The sooner one of you picks up that pipe and bashes the other's head, the sooner we get this over with.
Especially since his appearance really friggin' sucks. I really don't vibe with the beard and stash. It just exposes too much of his face. And from what I understand, his tattoos have no meaning behind them. I get that some people just have tattoos because they look cool or whatever, or like they want to look intimidating, but Bane is a man of purpose. Nothing he does is just for the sake of doing it. If he's going to permanently damage his skin, he would only do it if there was some significance behind the design, like a person or a thing important to him, or to specifically incite fear in his opponents. As it stands, they just exist for the sake of existing and really do not add to his aura at all.
Finding you in this duplicitous position while we have a mole problem, well, it does not look good for you, my friend.
Though one small detail I do really like are the syringe marks on his neck, from every time that he injects himself with venom. Just a great, subtle design choice that shows us how much he relies on / is addicted to venom rather than just directly telling us. It lets us put the pieces together that Bane is using venom often, but he doesn't necessarily want to. It's leaving clear and visible damage on his body, so imagine what the actual serum is doing to his insides. Definitely helps set up his motivation revealed in later chapters.
You'll find I'm not disposed of so easily!
Back to the criticisms though, he's also nowhere near as smart as we've come to expect from Bane. Sure, he's intelligent enough, but he's also very easily fooled throughout the entire rest of the game. Half the plot of Enemy Within is keeping the Pact convinced that Bruce is one of them, and Bane's whole thing is figuring out Bruce's secrets. Yet through the whole game, he's just so easily fooled. There's a few times where he has his suspicions, but they never go beyond suspicions. There's never a time where Bane just knows that something isn't right. He's far too believing in all of his scenes. made even worse by the fact that he's constantly accusing all of his men of being the rat, despite no evidence towards it, and he just keeps going with it, never paying so much as a glance in Bruce's direction unless he directly does something wrong.
I hope it's not you, Wayne. But if it is, I'll kill everyone who shows up for your funeral.
It definitely felt like a missed opportunity to have Bane be a much bigger pain in your side than he is. As it stands, he only accuses you when the plot demands it, and even then is very quick to back off, which is not something that Bane is known for doing. He could have been a much bigger threat than he was, but that said, he was still certainly a threat when he was given his moments to shine. So I can't be too harsh on him.
There can be no trust unless I can believe that you are who you say you are, and that you are really willing to do all that you claim.
Who does shine, though, in every single scene, is one of the most unique interpretations of the Joker and Harley Quinn that I've ever seen. This is the last direction that I was expecting this game to go in, and having it work, but the Enemy Within's Joker and Harley story is a complete swap of the two's roles. In this universe, Harley is the mad psychopath crime lord, and Joker, or more rather, John, is the obsessive underling just getting into crime. The two are one-to-one with how you'd expect the other to be in any other version of this story. Harley is not only batshit insane, but is also unbelievably cunning and intelligent, constantly tired of John being a suck-up, but also realizing how useful he is, so going along with it for the sake of having free help. And John is so unbelievably innocent and doesn't know what he's getting himself into, but just thinks that he's in love, so does everything in his power to break that innocence and just try to impress Harley. On paper, it sounds like it would be the absolute cringiest, bad fanfiction sounding story that you could conjure up. But in every single scene, it just works. I'll be talking more about John later in the video, because holy crap is there a lot to talk about, so let's focus on Harley.
Oh, look at that. There are some neurons firing in there after all.
With Riddler out of the picture, she's taken up the role as leader of the Pact, and she runs a very tight ship with no nonsense except that which she causes herself. When we first meet her as Bruce, it really felt like a classic Joker scene where she was constantly on the verge of pulling the trigger just because she thought it might be funny.
Oops.
And that feeling pretty much never lets up for the rest of the chapter, or game for that matter. Harley always feels like a ticking time bomb, even when she kinda trusts you. The other members of the Pact are so believing of Bruce. They honestly just feel really stupid most of the time. Or they're John. But Harley always has her suspicions, and even when she doesn't, she might just pull the trigger anyway because you outlived your usefulness or started butting into her territory as leader. And despite being Harley Quinn, who at this point has kinda become the butt of the joke on this channel, I was never questioning her authority. Not only did she constantly show off the skills required to be a leader, but also the attitude and willingness to step over boundaries when necessary. She was terrifying from beginning to end.
So don't play with my toys, or I'll bash in that pretty face of yours.
Aside from the original animated series version, because you just can't beat Arlene Sorkin, this might be my favorite interpretation of Harley Quinn ever, especially with how blatantly she manipulates John. Side tangent here, I just hate how I see so many people say that Joker loves, let alone even likes, Harley in just about any versions of the character. The only one that does, maybe, is Jared Leto, and we do not acknowledge that piece of shit's existence except to make fun of him. Joker tolerates Harley's existence because she's useful and fiercely loyal. He can use her as a punching bag, both literally or metaphorically.
Slapping around Harley? My hobby, by the way.
And she'll still come crawling back to him because of how much she loves him. He will throw her to the dogs with no hesitation if it means he'll make a swift getaway because she means nothing to him. He has never had and will never have feelings for Harley Quinn because his only love is Batman. And now we're seeing a flipped version of that exact same dynamic. Maybe even somewhat amplified with how Harley treats John throughout this game. She tolerates his existence in every single scene they share. Genuinely, every time the two share a scene and John so much as speaks a single sentence, Harley rolls her eyes in frustration, wondering why she's dealing with this idiot. She even directly tells Bruce, without any sugarcoating, that she only keeps John around because he's a useful plaything for her.
Puddin'? Are you kidding me? He's loyal to a fault.
I'm loyal, Harley. Yeah, definitely.
They've taken the iconic pet name that Harley always gives Joker, Puddin', and turned it into something frankly evil. It's always just been Harley's way, a sweet-talking Joker, a fun way to refer to him without saying his name in the same vein as Mr. J. In The Enemy Within, though, despite Harley clearly not being in love with John, she still calls him Puddin'.
Puddin', you might have surpassed the teacher.
And it's so clearly only being used as a way to manipulate him. She can tell how much John is obsessed with her without John even confessing anything at this point in the story, so uses Puddin' as a way of basically flirting with him to keep him under her thumb at all times. All my fellas in the audience know the feeling. A guy will hold on to a single random compliment for years, and Harley is dishing them out like an all-you-can-eat buffet to John, constantly feeding into that idea that they're meant to be together. He just needs to make it happen. It's so sad to watch it unfold, but it's also just a brilliant new direction to take these familiar elements of the character and create something brand new. I really didn't think this dynamic would work, and we'd just be seeing another boring girl boss Harley like in Suicide Squad. But the way they just simply make her the Joker of this story, manipulating her way to the top and straight up being crazy enough to do half the things she says she'll do, makes me just adore this version of the character.
You got that look in your eye, the kind that says you're trouble. And I only like trouble when I'm the one causing it.
Unfortunately, with all the time that we spend with Harley in Chapter 2, that's where the pacing problems come into play. More than half of Chapter 2 is spent on getting Bruce undercover to join the villains, so he can thwart their plan from the inside. That's at least the plan that Amanda Waller thinks is the best approach, rather than letting Batman simply do his job like he's been doing successfully for years at this point. And the only feasible way you're going to infiltrate them is by calling John and succeeding on their initiation test, which in this case is stealing a high-tech device from inside of Wayne Tower, while Harley is constantly watching over your shoulder and also messing everything up. To be fair, it is a pretty good series of tense scenes after tense scenes in the tower, as you're constantly trying to balance keeping Harley under control and keeping her in your good graces. There's one wrong move and bang, you're done. While I did overall enjoy this part of the chapter because of how much it built up Harley, it lasts so long that it takes away from the rest of what the chapter has. You spend so much time in Wayne Tower dealing with Harley that by the time you're inducted into the Pact, there's only about a half hour of this chapter left. And within that small time, you need to meet the other Pact members, convince them to let you join their crusade, and pull a heist with them before the credits roll. They try to cram so much into this back quarter of the chapter instead of taking a moment to just let it breathe. And this fast track towards the end really hurts the final member of the Pact we meet, Mr. Freeze.
What do you
I'll just say it outright. This is one of the worst versions of Mr. Freeze that we've ever gotten, and it's entirely to do with the fact that he has no screen time. Victor feels completely thrown in at the last minute, with absolutely nothing that we haven't already seen from his character before. Dying wife, looking for a cure, committing crimes to fund said cure. That's all. The only unique thing about him is his weapon of choice now being more akin to Killer Frost's abilities by touching things to freeze them, and the fact that he's voiced by the absolute GOAT that is Matthew Mercer.
Maybe you're better suited for the realm of business. The people you kill there are faceless.
Aside from that, he's got nothing. 'Cause really, you just never take time to dive into any of it. We get his backstory secondhand from Harley. We never even see Nora, despite the fact that she's supposed to be in the Pack's hideout, and overall, he just contributes so little to basically everything in the story. He's pretty much just background decoration, used to have an occasionally shocking moment when he kills people in each chapter. It got old after the first time, Victor, I'm gonna be honest. The conversation you have when first meeting him is the only one-on-one time you get with the man until he's unceremoniously removed from the game at the beginning of Chapter 4. He was clearly only thrown in because they needed another member of the Pact that fit with the stories that they were building up for the other members, but just didn't give him the time to actually expand his character. Which really sucks because of how great a character Mr. Freeze normally is. There could have been an amazing scene between him and Bruce talking about losing ones that they love, because throughout this whole game, Alfred is going through some health problems that only get worse as it progresses. It could have been a great way for the two to bond and convince him that they're on the same side. Maybe even a way to begin steering Victor back to the light by showing that he's not the only one suffering a loss like this. I don't know, I think there could have been something with this character, but they just kinda did nothing.
I've done it. I did it, Nora.
I mean, it's whatever, just because of how strong everything else in this game is. But as you're playing through The Enemy Within, you will constantly wonder what the point of Freeze even being there is. At least Bane provided a boss for Bruce to fight.
Personally, I don't have a whole lot to say about Chapter 2, mostly because not a lot happens. It just feels like a lot of wheel spinning, and then we suddenly rush through meeting the Pack way too fast. I get that Bruce needs to prove his loyalty, but we spend way too much time at Wayne Tower, when that time could have been to develop the Pack dynamic more. I feel like the whole Pack should have given Bruce the assignment other than Harley. I understand we have to develop her a bit more, but the chapter is called The Pact, so you assume the Pact would give him the assignment, and that would have made the chapter feel way more narratively cohesive in my opinion.
But the chapter ends with all the proof you needed that this game is gonna go sideways at every single turn. Because you are thrown right on the front lines of one of the Pact's heists, forced to play along with them and let them succeed so that you don't blow your cover. And what were they retrieving on this heist? Against the agency, no less? A box that contains the most valuable thing all of them lost at the end of Chapter 1. The corpse of their dear departed friend, Edward Nygma. Even when he's dead, Eddie finds a way to weasel himself back into the story. And like I said at the end of his section, he's here to stay. Despite it looking like he's only the big bad for the first chapter of this game, his spirit lingers throughout the entire ordeal. So often in media, when a character dies, that's just it. The world moves on like nothing happened as soon as a funeral takes place, because at the end of the day, they were just another person we happened to witness merely existing in this world. But Riddler essentially transcends death because of how important his role in Gotham was. You can tell how much the Pact liked and respected him. Even by the time we get all the way to Chapter 5, he's still being brought up. He was so important to them and their plan that his death simply becomes something that they can never move on from. He ends up influencing most major plot points from here forward, either having personally affected the character or having a contingency plan for the pact that they need to now act on in his absence. Of all the characters to make essentially the MacGuffin of this story, I was not expecting Riddler to be the one, but it just works because of how well they established his character back in Chapter 1. They made a man who was clearly out for revenge, who was obsessed with puzzles and the obscure, and made it so that his plan would absolutely be seen through by his friends, even if he wasn't around to see it. As long as they're willing to put in the work and played along with his games, of course. And it's really cool seeing how much the Pact begrudgingly accepts going along with those games. They respected Riddler so much that they're willing to look past these faults and go along with them, because they trust in him and his plan. It's just such amazing world building that only gets crazier with the reintroduction of a Season 1 character as we move on to Chapter 3.
Nice place you got here. Did it come with the vermin, or did you add that yourselves?
Chapter 3, Fractured Mask, marks the reintroduction of our ever-important companion from Season 1 and the only villain to return from said game, Selina Kyle.
I didn't come back to Gotham to start up this dance again. But seeing as how both our lives are on the line, let's try to be professional.
This chapter half revolves around her and other half keeping your cover in the Pact while pulling some seriously dangerous plays to try and get information. I'd say personally it's the second weakest chapter of the game, mostly brought down by its lack of memorability, but brought right back up by the incredible character work and how much mystery they're able to build up for the last two chapters. It's a running theme that each chapter of this game ends with more questions than answers, and Chapter 3 has far and away the most and most dire of them all. Chapter 1, you're wondering who shot Riddler, who are his allies, how does Waller know we're Bruce Wayne, and how is she going to use that against us? Relatively simple stuff. Chapter 2, why did the agency preserve Riddler's body? Why does the Pact need it? And seriously, what is their overarching plan at this point? And most of those questions are answered rather quickly in their subsequent chapters. But with Chapter 3, for every question answered, a new one is posed. Or the light is shifted in a way that makes you wonder if you were ever even asking the right question to begin with. Catwoman is a reluctant ally of the Pact, only working with them because she was promised payment before all this went down. Though also because she too had a level of respect for Riddler. It's a strange dynamic that she has with the rest of the villains, where it's very clear that she doesn't want to be associated with them because she has no interest in their end goal, but is also perfectly fine working for them. Not only because of the paycheck, but also because she had some level of admiration for Eddie. She's genuinely pretty upset when she learns about Eddie's fate, talks about all the good jobs he got for her, and mentions how the Eddie she knew back then was not the same man that began to terrorize Gotham. It's very different from the Arkham iteration, where it's clear that the two merely tolerate each other for the sake of getting a job done and have no problem betraying one another. Here there's a sort of mutual respect going on, and just maybe a fling or two in Europe as well?
So we all can agree they totally hooked up, right? Because Selina is acting way too casual in this hideout.
He became a valuable contact when money was tight.
Yeah, okay, sure, Selina.
Who can tell? Either way, it leads to a Catwoman that's just as morally gray as she was in Season 1. She wants to help Bruce, maybe even rekindle a flame that the two started to ignite back then, but isn't sure if she's in the right place to do it. She has some level of loyalty to the Pact due to her connection to Riddler, but the more that the chapter goes on, the more it's clear that she really doesn't want to help them, because doing so could essentially destroy Gotham. It further paints the cracks left behind by her premature departure in Season 1 and further grays her morality. Is she nothing but a common thief who is exclusively out for herself? Or does she secretly have a heart of gold and really want to help people? The answer entirely depends on how you treat her throughout this chapter. I'll say that Chapter 3 definitely has the lowest number of big choices compared to the rest of the game, but the few that it does force on you are some of the absolute most brutal in the entire thing. Going as far as keeping your identity a secret, straining your already tense relationship with Selina, and choosing which of your allies to give up for the sake of completing the mission. It's rough, this chapter, and is complemented by all the little scenes we get with the characters, most notably John. Again, I promise we'll get to him eventually. Please just bear with me, we've got a lot of ground to cover.
Wow, that's... You really... This is what dedication looks like, huh?
Aside from that, there isn't all too much to discuss from this chapter. The only other noteworthy scene is the detective segment where Bruce gets found snooping by Bane, which, like I said, should have set off more alarm bells than it did for a character like him. He's just way too trusting of Bruce in this scene, even directly saying that he hopes Bruce isn't the rat, which implies that he really thinks that it is and doesn't want to believe it. Which is not in character for Bane, even this version of Bane, at all.
What the hell is going on here?
No! Merely plugging their leak.
And the chapter ends with you straight up betraying the trust of one of your few allies in this terrible mess. It doesn't get much worse than building a positive relationship with a character than being forced to essentially get them killed right in front of your eyes for the sake of completing the mission. It was the roughest ending of any of these chapters. Because like with fighting Riddler in Chapter 1, it felt like I was finally making some good progress in taking the Pact down from the inside. I got the location of the Black Site, I was working with the agency to plot their downfall, I even got Catwoman back towards the light side, and was working really well on keeping John there too. But Harley is just way too smart. She picked up on the rat's tail and followed it straight to the body, finding none other than Brucey Boy at the end, forcing him to prove his loyalty, or all the work we've been putting in would be for nothing. And it only gets worse as we continue on to Chapter 4. Chapter 4, What Ails You, is where everything we've been building up these past 6 hours comes crashing down. The Pact has everything they need to enact their big picture heist, and the only thing standing in their way is going to be you. What I especially love about both this and the previous chapter is how it frames the Pact's motivations as sympathetic but entirely misguided and casts massive shade on the agency, but still leaves you with just enough reasonable doubt that you think it's possible that they're doing this for the right reasons. The Pact is trying to get a super virus created by the agency that, thanks to the Riddler, is capable of being so much more than just a deadly bioweapon. Riddler survived his exposure to the virus, and he found that surviving it was a one-way ticket to enhanced healing. If you're wondering how a 60-year-old man can go toe-to-toe with prime Batman, here's your answer. Surviving the virus healed just about every ailment he had, making him stronger and faster than he'd ever been in his life. The rest of the Pact thinks that can solve their problems as well. Freeze believes that the healing properties could cure Nora. Bane believes it could cure his addiction to venom, or even make it more potent but less damaging. And Harley believes it would save her from an impending hereditary mental disease inherited from her late father.
The virus can do all that?
The issue and factor that they don't know about is that in exchange, the virus also heavily decays the user's mind.
It drives you insane.
It's why Riddler has grown, for lack of a better word, crazy while still retaining his intelligence. Sure, he was fixed physically, but he was mentally decaying at a rapid rate, turning into only a shadow of his former self, as we saw Catwoman mention. This fact once again gives the Pact so many more layers than merely being crazed lunatics who want to use a bioweapon to kill a bunch of people. They're doing this to fix themselves, without knowing the consequences of doing all of it. If they succeed and go through with their plans, Nora probably would have suffered brain death instead of the death from her disease. Bane would have lost all of his intelligence and become the raging monster that we see in Arkham. And Harley would have likely amplified the condition that she was trying to avoid, because it targets physical problems, not mental ones. It explains why they feel so betrayed when Bruce turns against them in the heist. They really believed that they were the good guys of their own story, taking down a corrupt government institution and turning their horrible creation into something positive for each of their own situations. So seeing someone that they started to trust suddenly betray them and destroy the one thing they've been working for months to get absolutely crushes them. It leads to a great confrontation where Bruce needs to survive against Bane, Harley, and Freeze all at the same time, all while hoping that the destruction process for the virus runs its course before someone can extract it. It's a solid fight that ends with Harley showing exactly who she is, leaving behind the ones she claimed to care about because she was always out for herself.
The virus! What?
Belongs to me.
What are you doing? You need me!
Not anymore.
That fact finally becomes clear to John and Freeze, who she leaves behind exposed to the virus in a containment unit. This is that final scene with Freeze I was talking about earlier, and is yet another missed opportunity for the game as a whole. After this scene, Freeze is literally just gone from the game altogether. No reappearance in Chapter 5 with the rest of the Pact, no lingering questions about what's happening to him, not even a post-credits scene. We don't even get a results page for his character like we do with Harley. He's just gone. It was one of the strangest parts of the game, but I mean, it kind of made sense with the whole throwaway character part. And in the end, what he ultimately does for the plot at this point is put doubts in Bruce's head about Waller. Backpedaling a little bit, what I really love through all of Enemy Within is how much doubt they leave for Amanda Waller. I've waited to mention her until now because I just love what they do with her character, but it only really becomes clear in the later chapters. We all know that Amanda Waller is one of the most evil and corrupt people in DC. It's difficult to find a more hateable character than her, because she's constantly going on these tirades about how her way of operating must be right, always going on and on about how much she cares about the safety of her country, meanwhile casually starting wars with other ones and putting supervillains on the front line to fight, not caring about the safety of her own operatives if it means getting the mission done. She is the worst. And throughout the whole Enemy Within, I was thinking that they'd take a different route with her. They've shown time and time again that they'll put their own spins on these characters, making them completely different from their source material, but still leaving the core of the character intact. They did it for Penguin, Harley, Joker, Riddler, tons of them, so why not do it with Waller as well? For a good portion of the game, I was genuinely believing that I might be able to trust Waller. She was a hard-ass, sure, and she dangled Bruce's identity being revealed within the first chapter of the game, but at that point, drastic measures needed to be taken. We see the stakes we're up against, so I can't entirely blame her for playing hardball to get us to go along with it.
To deal with the present threat, though, I need both of you. The man inside and outside the mask. You have to understand, I'm not the enemy here.
And the longer that we do work for her, the longer it seems like she might actually be a good person with Gotham's best interests in mind. And other funny jokes that you can tell yourself.
As much as I hate to admit it, you have a point.
Come on, it's Amanda goddamn Waller. You can't trust her to do shit, let alone miraculously become a good person just because someone else is handling the character. But it's amazing that they really made me believe that she was for a while. They built her up as this character that really cared about cleaning up the agency and getting the mission done, just employing a few questionable strategies to do it. When the enemy's playing dirty, you gotta get in the mud yourself too.
It all gets blurry. And guess what? That's okay. Because you're going to have to do some blurry things that you are not proud of before this is done.
And it's like, we're Batman, we're a vigilante, we're pulling off the same dirty tactics that she is. Until we get to chapter 4, and her intentions couldn't be more clear. This is the same Amanda Waller that we all know and hate. Corrupt to the core, always scheming for another big asset, and keeping her employees completely in the dark to it all. And those true shades are, admittedly, pretty slowly revealed through the last few chapters.
This is why I'm willing to let these criminals be the tip of the spear. Dangerous and expendable. My favorite adjectives.
But by the time that she takes over the lab and starts looking for remnants of the virus, it's crystal clear that I was led astray and Waller was going to be the big bad that I needed to take down the entire time. The rest of the chapter just kinda amplifies it all, with more and more dirt being uncovered about her, constantly making her more shady and harder to trust. Which is why I put all of my trust into one of the least likely sources, who we'll pretty much be talking about for the rest of this video.
Call me when you got something I care about.
Oh my god, I still have a third of my script left. God help me.
It's what pals do. I know you'd do the same for me.
Alright, you've waited this long, let's finally talk about the man of the hour, John Doe.
Really? I knew you'd see reason. I didn't expect you to see it that fast. Okay, this is good.
John is just straight up the best character in the entirety of the Telltale Batman universe. And like I said back during the Harley section, it really shouldn't work. This is the tamest version of the Joker that you will ever see. He's not psychotic, he's not a mass murderer, he isn't even all that jokey, to be honest.
Wait, I got the punchline wrong. Let me start over.
It's fine, John.
But one thing that he is that you can't say about any other version of the character that makes him so unbelievably lovable is he's your friend. John is straight up the nicest guy you will ever meet in Telltale Batman. He helped you get out of the asylum back in season 1 for no reason other than out of the goodness of his heart. So naturally, yeah, we need to repay that favor. He helped us, you better believe we're gonna help him back. And I mean that in 2 ways. Yeah, we're gonna do him that favor because we owe him and all that, but we're also going to help him become a better person and get away from this life of crime. It's clear in just about every interaction that you have with John that he doesn't really want any of this. He's honestly the equivalent of a kid playing a violent video game too early. He's seeing all this messed up stuff and doesn't really know how to process it, so just accepts it as normal because he doesn't have a real conception of right and wrong. He's always looking to other people for approval, hoping that he did right by their standards, because his entire life up until this point has been living up to the standards set in place for prisoners in Arkham.
Sometimes I miss those padded walls. You knew where the lines were drawn, which ones not to cross.
John's story is one of the saddest Joker stories I've ever seen, because throughout the entirety of The Enemy Within, it always feels like he was just at the wrong place at the wrong time. He has this pure heart that wants to be good, wants to help people, wants to be normal, but everything is constantly pushing him towards the dark side. Bruce is the only thing that might be able to swing him in the right direction, bring him back to the person that convincingly left Arkham with his certificate of sanity.
I mean, I hated the guy, but geez, Bruce, you really think I'd be capable of cold-blooded murder?
So many of your interactions with John boil down to hyping up his enthusiasm to keep him happy, but also slowly working him down from that way of thinking so that he might turn over a new leaf. It's best shown in the middle of Chapter 3, during easily one of the best scenes in all of Telltale, where Bruce and John are just sitting and talking at a coffee shop.
That's the stuff.
It's one of the simplest scenes conceptually, but the enemy within is able to evolve it into meaning so much more. On the surface, it's just Batman and Joker sitting and talking over coffee. But at its core, it's a scene of two lost souls who don't really know their place in the world coming together and realizing that they're the same, but that they can both help each other. At his core, all John wants is to be seen. Because of the way Harley and the others treat him, he basically only thinks of himself as a background character in everybody else's story. And the sad part is that he's kind of right. All things told, he really doesn't do all that much for the first half of the game, or really any of Telltale 1 for that matter. He was very much just a background accessory that Bruce likely would have forgotten about by the time of Enemy Within if not for him suddenly butting into our life again. And when he is finally front and center while Bruce goes undercover, he doesn't do all that much work with the Pact. He's Harley's pack mule above all else, and little more than a verbal punching bag for everyone else in the subway. He exists to push everyone else's story forward, except for his own. He's nothing more than a common grunt and just wants to be more.
Oh no, Harley gave me an assignment and I mean to fulfill it.
The problem is that he doesn't know how to be more. He can't be more of something that he isn't when he doesn't even know who he himself is. Despite being released from Arkham, John still doesn't know who he is. Out here in the real world, he's lost. Everything in Arkham just made sense. The routines, the controlled nature, the constant hum of the lights, it all felt natural to him. Out here in Gotham, a city corrupted by terror and chaos, it's all too overwhelming, especially for someone who doesn't really have a place in it yet. He's always trying to find it and believes that he can find it with Harley. It's what drives him to be with her, to be like her even, and what always leaves him so conflicted when it comes to helping Bruce. Underneath it all, John is good and wants to continue to be good, but he keeps finding these sources that give him conflicting information. Bruce wants him to be one way, and he trusts Bruce because he's his friend. One of the few people he met in Arkham that he also meets on the outside.
Arkham is hell.
It was my home, Bruce. And home is where the heart is.
Harley, though, wants him to be another way, and he trusts Harley because her thriving on chaos matches the chaos that Gotham is constantly expelling on him, so assumes that it must be right if she can match the world around them.
She found me at a dark time and gave me a reason to live out here and experience all this.
It's two conflicting sides always playing tug of war that he can't decide which to follow, because there's no set guidelines like he had in Arkham. He simply follows whatever feels right in the moment, hoping that it's the right answer, until he can find the right answer himself.
Hey, I believe in you, John. You show that wall who's boss.
I really think Chapter 3 is a huge turning point for Bruce and John's relationship, and that coffee shop scene is a perfect example of that. It honestly feels like it sits right in the middle of the game on purpose, because from that point on, the relationship slowly becomes the main focus of the entire story. You're actively shaping who John becomes, depending on your choices. You're either turning him into your closest friend or your worst enemy. You can feel the cracks start to show in this scene. The way John talks, the way he reacts, the way he's clearly trying to hold himself together. You start to realize how hard he's struggling with those inner demons. And you, the player, gets a first-hand glimpse that John could be genuinely dangerous, depending on the situation and how far he's pushed. But at the same time, it's weirdly endearing. It's one of those few moments where Bruce is just having a casual conversation with someone who's about to become the Joker. The other scene that's personally one of my favorites outside of the Vigilante Joker ending is the moment where Batman teaches John Doe how to use a Batarang. To me, it's one of the most sweetest and most insightful scenes in the entire game, because it's literally Batman taking the time to teach his precious little baby boy how to use a Batarang, just because John genuinely wanted to learn. And you can really feel it here. John wants to be a better person. He's trying so hard to be heroic, to be like Batman. And it's honestly kind of heartbreaking in the best way. It's so cute when he asks Batman to teach him, and then he gets all nervous holding it. Like, how can you hate this man? It's so charming and innocent that you can't help but smile. And when he says he's going to practice it all the time, that's just icing on the cake. It's adorable in that moment, but it also becomes really strong foreshadowing if you choose the vigilante route. It's also so satisfying when you see John throw a Batarang at the back of Bane's neck in Chapter 4. I love that shit. Chapter 3 is definitely a huge step up from Chapter 2. It definitely fixes a lot of the problems and get the plot into motion again, since we start to learn where this is kind of going, and the rising action is beginning to climb.
For pretty much the entire game, but especially for Chapter 3, John is in a constant, delicate balancing act between keeping Harley happy and keeping Bruce happy. So by the time we get to Chapter 4, and it looks like both of them completely betray him, he's kinda lost. His depressive spiel in Harley's office is one of the saddest moments for the character, because it really feels like it might be the end of the road for John, like he's completely given up on everything. He's completely lost faith in Harley, never even wants to see her again. Even if it means tracking her down and getting revenge, he wants nothing more to do with her. And he's seemingly lost faith in Bruce as well, wondering if he was ever really his friend or just a tool. He's running out of reasons to believe him anymore.
I care, John. You know that.
I'm nearly out of reasons to believe you anymore, Bruce.
In a way, it's somewhat cathartic to see the character go through this crisis of faith. The entire game, he's been a background pawn working for someone else. So far, the only thing that Bruce has done for him is meet his new friends, which he was just paying back a debt Bruce owed him anyways, so ultimately it was just a ploy to get closer to the villains and learn how they operate. Throughout it all, Bruce has added up a ton more favors, basically treating John like Harley does. So to see him finally snap, not wanting to be that pack mule for anyone anymore, is a little scary at first, but also just empowering to see. He's breaking away from the role that he was forced into and finally starting to understand who he wants to be.
I just can't say no to you, Bruce.
But he just can't say no to Bruce's otherworldly Wayne charm. He'll still help Bruce find Harley as much as he doesn't want to, as long as he can do it alone. Which leads to one of the big choices of the chapter. Do you actually trust John to go through with it? This is a surprisingly common theme throughout all of Enemy Within. Every single chapter has at least one point where Bruce must decide whether or not to believe that John will follow through. And the crazy thing is that he always does. As loopy as John may seem at times, he will always follow through on favors for Bruce. He gives up Riddler's hiding place in the East End, and even follows through finding him another lead in Rumi Mori. We ask him to keep quiet about Tiffany in the tower, And he does it, despite how much Harley would definitely want to know. He sets off the EMP in the lair, trusting that Bruce will know how to disarm it so he can get in the good graces of Bane and Freeze. We trust him to get the laptop from Harley's office, and if it weren't for Catwoman, he would have followed through and gotten the computer to Batman. Every single time we trust John in this game, he follows through. And even here, at his absolute lowest point mentally, even after saying he doesn't want to find Harley because of what he might do to her, we can still trust him. Of every character to trust, you wouldn't think that Joker would be one of them, but it really is the case. John is with you 110% of the time, and will always follow through on whatever you might trust him with. That includes tracking down Harley right here in Chapter 4.
It's funny. When you first walked through that door, I honestly thought you came here to check on me.
He puts in the effort to really do it, tracking her to an old funhouse where we get one of the most unsettling scenes in the game. We find John at the back of an abandoned funhouse, surrounded by bodies, with blood all over his hands, laughing like a maniac. Thus begins a tense game of he said, she said, where we're trying to figure out what happened, and John is very clearly not telling us the full story.
You're not supposed to just start shooting, Bruce. They're supposed to say, hands up! I've seen it on the TV.
But Bruce's interrogation ends up pushing John just a bit too far. He finally understands the relationship that they have, that he's really had with everyone in the entire Telltale series. Everyone just uses him, even his supposed best friend. The goodwill only flowed one way. Only John actually cared to try and be a friend.
You've been using me from the start! At least have the decency to admit it!
And no matter what you considered your relationship with John, he's right. You did use him. Even if you did consider John your friend, try and think back to anything that you did for him beyond, let's face it, pretty bad dating advice. Everything else has been a one-way exchange. John helps Bruce, Bruce gets something good, old John is left to suffer the consequences. All that we've been doing is emotional help, trying to steer him towards the path of good, but that's not really something that can be measured by a former asylum patient who still needs to learn the difference between the dark and light side. All things considered, no matter what path you take, you use John, and he's finally beginning to realize it himself.
I'm sorry, John, but there's more at stake here than your feelings.
It's like Dr. Leland always said. Never demean another person's emotions!
He's also realized that his old buddy Bruce isn't all that he says he is. That he's got one more secret that he's always trying to hide.
What do you need your bat suit to really get you in the mood?
It's one aspect of the game that I'm a little mixed on. So many people in this game, and series in general, learn that Bruce Wayne is Batman. In this game alone, you've got Avesta, Waller, Tiffany, and John. And that was just from my playthrough. That's 4 characters that learn the biggest secret that Bruce has, and what is generally the end-all be-all thing that stops him from becoming Batman. But they throw his identity around so casually in this game, I figured it was just gonna be revealed to the world by the end of it. On the one hand, it's crazy that so many people end up learning it, and only one of them actually uses it against you. But on the other, it kinda brings down the importance of the information if so many people are figuring it out. Though it is really cool to finally see a Joker figure out who Batman is completely on his own, not being given the information from an outside source like a Robin. And John even plays the fact that we've been underestimating him up. He knows that we never would have thought he could have figured it out.
I never miss a trick, it all gets filed away up here.
In that sense, he's really been playing the fool, constantly looking and acting like an idiot, only to always have every little mental note filed away for later right up there. Then putting it all together and surprising you with a backhand of pure knowledge. And that said, with this information now out there, it really makes you wonder if you can trust John one last time.
Let me help you stop her. I'm not asking for much, just a little faith.
You've done it the entire game so far, but after all this, failing to get Harley, killing agents allegedly in self-defense, and now knowing your biggest secret, can you really trust him one last time?
One more time. You do believe me, don't you? You still have faith in me, don't you? Your old buddy John?
I did. And for my courage believing John, I am treated to the greatest team-up the world never knew that it needed in Chapter 5, with the introduction of Vigilante Joker.
Now, we have reached the turning point. This is where John surprisingly becomes the enemy within. He finally realizes who Bruce is, and it's still so uncanny every time he says,
"You are the Batman."
That gives me chills still. And I love Bruce's reaction in that moment too. You can literally see him swallow his pride because he knows he can't deny it anymore, not with the evidence stacked against him. It really hits you here that we've been underestimating John this whole time. He's a lot smarter than he looks, and that makes him a hell of a lot scarier. And what makes this scene even hit harder is how John brings back that line from earlier in episode 1.
We're two threads in the same stitch, remember?
He says it near the beginning and now at the absolute peak turning point. Right when your final choice is about to define everything, he brings it full circle. And of course, they name the final episode The Same Stitch. No matter what path you choose, because at this point, whether John becomes your friend or your worst nightmare, the real battle is happening inside him.
So remember that totally legit Arkham City trailer with Batman and Joker fighting a group of thugs side by side? Well, Telltale looked at that video and basically said, let's do that, but actually good. And created the greatest duo imaginable in the final chapter, Same Stitch. Throughout this final endeavor, John has finally discovered who he was meant to be in life. He no longer worships Harley and idolizes the criminal underworld. Instead, he's taken up Batman's teaching and become a vigilante himself, under a new name, Joker.
I tried out a few other ones. Birdman, Hawkman, Fox Batman, the Giggler, Chuckle Master, Lord of the Laughs, and the Joke Man.
And despite having absolutely no training to his name, Joker takes to it surprisingly well, crafting his own takes on Batman's gadgets and being strangely adept at hand-to-hand combat. The two work remarkably well together in taking down a new and improved Bane. Definitely the scariest that Bane has been all game, and frankly looking a lot cooler as well. But this encounter gives light to the man that we're actually working with. Sure, you'll get into the flow of combat with him, work well in tandem with one another, but at the end of it all, remember who this character actually is. The moment that Bane is defeated and snaps back at Joker with an allegation of murder, Joker doesn't take it sitting down. He immediately snaps and goes into a stabbing rage against Bane, only stopping because Batman can pull him off. Bats confronts him, naturally, but it's not really clear if he's getting the message.
You can't be a killer and a hero. It's one or the other.
Says who? Not history. Do you think that...
Batman doesn't kill. Heroes don't kill. And if he wants to really do this and work alongside Batman, he needs to get that through his head. Unfortunately, the more time that we spend with Joker, the more clear it is that the message isn't getting through. with one of the single best Telltale prompts I've ever seen. Joker totally forgot to remember that. Just a brilliant subversion of a trope we've all become familiar with and honestly gotten a little tired of, while also perfectly showing where Joker's head is in all this. He does want to be a hero, but he wants to do it in his own way. He's seen Batman's methods for a long time now, and is quickly realizing that they simply aren't working. Joker is ready to push the boundaries, break everyone's conception of a hero being like Batman and doing things his own way.
He just needed one more good stab to an artery, and it would be over.
A little cruel, sure. A bit crazy, maybe, but effective.
Technically, I'd still be giving her the virus. I only want to see her melt. A little. Liquefy her insides. A tiny bit.
Because the people he's hurting have already hurt others enough. It's the law of equivalent exchange. And if they're not around to hurt people anymore, the world will be a better place. It's so painful watching Joker trying to be good, trying to be what he thinks a hero is, and Batman always having to shut him down. We've worked so hard to get him to this point, to pull him away from the draw of crime, and now that we finally have, now that he's enthusiastic about doing the right thing, we have to keep stopping him dead in his tracks because he still can't truly discern from right and wrong. Which makes his sudden turn over to the dark side even more sad. Batman tries all he can to make a deal with Waller. He has dirt on her just as she has dirt on him. She believes the compromise is equal. She leaves Gotham with her new group of criminal workers, and Batman will never see her again. Joker does not like these terms.
That's not acceptable! Not at all!
After everything she's done, all the people she's hurt, and people she will hurt in the future with these people working for her, she needs to be stopped permanently. To Joker, it is the biggest betrayal of trust he could imagine. He drops the noble heroics and goes straight for the killing joke.
You're worse than me! That makes me the hero! And this is what heroes do to villains!
What are you doing?
He's dealt with enough of Waller's lies. He's going full Punisher on her ass. She doesn't deserve the mercy that Batman's granting her. So he kidnaps her and holds her at knife point in Ace Chemicals. John tried so hard to be a hero like Batman. He listened to his teachings as best as he could, but he just couldn't control his demons. Unlike someone else. Don't worry, we'll get back to John in a minute. This leads into the final noteworthy character of Enemy Within that I hadn't talked about yet. Lucius Fox's daughter, Tiffany Fox. After Lucius's death in Chapter 1, Bruce promised that he'd take care of his family. And the most prominent member of that family, who keeps showing up throughout the rest of the game, is Tiffany. Right from her first appearance, something was off about her. I knew she'd be more important to the story than just someone we needed to protect, because Alfred was already filling in that role for us. But I couldn't figure out what they had in mind. The constant pushing of her help was strange, but at the same time, much appreciated because of how dire the situations were. When it came time for our conversation in Chapter 3, you better believe I told her the truth about what I was. I swore on Lucius's grave that I would protect and be honest with Tiffany, and I intended to hold up that promise. Not only revealing my identity, but also, unfortunately, needing to sell out Catwoman so that Harley and the crew didn't go after her at the end of Chapter 3. And in doing this, I was essentially rewarded a pseudo-Robin for the rest of the game. I'll be honest, at first, her accompanying Bruce to the crime scene felt a little tacked on and unnecessary, until I learned the truth about why she was going out of her way to help me in the first place. She was the one who killed Riddler. This twist reveal that it was her all along genuinely blew me away. I was fully convinced that it was John, and he was simply deluding himself into believing it wasn't him. He'd proven he was capable of doing it before with the agents in the funhouse. That attack happened minutes before Bruce arrived, and yet John can barely form a cohesive thought about what happened. So why wouldn't the same thing happen when he's potentially murdering his so-called best friend, who he directly claimed that he didn't like all the way back during Lucius's funeral?
You're a rotting, stinking corpse! That's who you are!
But the sudden reveal that it was Tiffany not only made perfect sense, but had me on the floor with how surprised I was. It tied everything about her character up until that point together. Why was she snooping around Wayne Tower after hours? Why was she insistent on arming Batman with a gun? Why did she want to go out and fight alongside him? Because she was the one who started this the whole time, and was now trying to make up for her sins in the only way she knew how. Tiffany is exactly what we were trying to do with John the entire time. She already had her fall, already took a life getting revenge on Riddler for the death of her father. And yet just a few days of studying under Batman, she's learned the error of her ways and understands the meaning of being a true hero. She understands that Batman doesn't kill and understands why he doesn't kill.
Of course I think about it sometimes. It'd be the easiest thing in the world.
But easy doesn't make it right.
Bingo.
It's the coward's way out. It would be easy to pick up a gun and lay waste to every piece of criminal scum in Gotham just like that. But that wouldn't make him a hero. He'd just be an executioner. Tiffany realizes that, and is now ready to put in the hard work that John wasn't willing to, not only to make up for her mistake, but become better in spite of it.
If you want to fill your father's shoes, you need to learn right from wrong. You need someone to teach you.
You're giving me a second chance?
Think of it more as a sentence. You'll have to work hard for your redemption.
Tiffany is proof that Batman's methods do work, and people can be redeemed. They just need to be willing to put in the work to do it. Which of course is why I forgave her at the end and continued to work with her despite everything. Look, if you tried to get John over to the light despite all the crazy shit he's done, it would be unbelievably hypocritical to deny Tiffany, especially when her crimes are so much more tame compared to John. And it's crystal clear that she understands Batman's methodology when John just doesn't and always ends up wanting to resort to killing. It's exactly why she's in the position of sidekick and Joker is the one holding someone at knife point.
Just for the record, I literally told Clown before he played Season 2, I predicted he was going to get this ending. I just knew he was going to believe John because, like, how can you not? But since he's covering the vigilante route, I figured I'll showcase some clips and highlights from the villain route. And honestly, it's still really good. I'll say it's just as strong as the vigilante Joker, but I think the vigilante ending tugs at the heartstrings a bit more, and it feels better paced than the villain route, at least in my opinion. But it does include one of the best scenes in Batman media ever, and we'll get to that. I love how the very first time we see the villain Joker in Chapter 5, he just strolls into Wayne Tower like he owns the place. It's such a good callback too, because back in Chapter 2, he literally says he's gonna try to own a place like this one day. And for a moment, he kind of does. And the way he just kills almost everybody in the room, it's absolutely horrifying. But it's also such a clever statement of power. Like, he's not just trying to prove himself anymore, he's trying to control himself. Then the scene when he looks down and mocks Bruce, the scene even hits harder because even after all of that, what you just witnessed, you can still try to reach for John, because we all know he's still in there somewhere.
It doesn't have to be this way. We don't have to be enemies.
And this is what I love about the villain route. Even though it ends up being essentially pointless, you, the player, still can keep trying. It shows that not only Bruce, but you still believe there's goodness in John, especially in those small flashes of vulnerability later on. Like when he calls out for his doctor from Arkham, and Batman simply says,
John,
My poor little heart can only take so much. And then the buildup for the whole episode really kicks into gear when you get kidnapped as Bruce Wayne and end up at Joker's dinner party with Harley. And then it gets even crazier because you find out Tiffany is there and Selina is there, and eventually Alfred shows up. And at this point, it's just pure madness unfolding around you from every angle. So I have to give a shout out to the facial animations in this scene when Joker and Harley just start making out on the table and Selina and Tiffany just look completely appalled. This just kills me every time. The animators, whoever they were, deserve a freaking award for this. But seriously, the tone of this entire sequence is honestly award-winning. The tension is unreal, the writing is sharp, and it's the kind of Joker scene that movies and shows wish they could pull off. And that little game they play, this is peak Joker. Like, this is exactly the kind of unsettling, unpredictable, psychological chaos he's supposed to bring.
A game, 3 rounds, 1 for each of Bruce's friends. Now, the way that this works is, if you have lied to a friend, finger goes down. And now, if you've lowered a finger, I get to do something terrible to you.
The whole dinner party sequence is just masterfully done. Every question gets worse and worse, and with each round, you realize more and more that this group of people are pretty terrible people. And yet, even in the middle of all this madness, you can still try to reach out to John. You can still try to remind him that what he's doing isn't really him, but he keeps coming back to that same thing. He tells you that Bruce Wayne killed John Doe. And the sad part is, he's not wrong. Because after that, everything John has done for the rest of the episode proves it. He's gone. Even more than we ever see in the Vigilante storyline. Because Bruce Wayne didn't believe him. You didn't believe him when he needed you the most. And that's what killed him inside.
The Enemy Within has quite possibly the greatest final battle between Batman and Joker ever. Because throughout the entire fight, you know you're doing the right thing. You know you need to stop John before he goes on to kill even more people, but you hate that you have to resort to this in order to stop it. Even still, it's a glorious fight, with both Batman and Joker pulling out every move in their arsenal, and John laughing like an absolute maniac all the way through it. You thought Origins Joker was able to laugh through a beatdown? Allow me to introduce you to John Doe.
That's enough!
It is absolutely brutal, and the entire time you're wondering if it really needed to come to this, even though John is directly telling you that it was destined to be this way. He said it himself. He tried to be good, he tried to believe in Batman, but he just can't go back to the beginning and not know who he is all over again. He finally found something that he's good at. He found his place in the world. He knows who he is. And now, after all this time supporting him, trying to get him to do anything else, he's realized the truth. It was all a lie. There is no John Doe anymore. No unidentifiable corpse with nowhere to go at a crime scene. No mystery over who he is anymore. No doubt in his mind that this is who he is and was always meant to be. He spent so much of his life lost, only following Bruce because he admired him, wanted to be like him, and it caused him to lose sight of who he was meant to be.
John.
It's Joker!
He is the Joker. But even despite that, regardless of who he is now choosing to be, what this character is synonymous with, it doesn't take away from the fact that we genuinely, truly wanted to help John down the right path, and believed that we could do it too. The Joker, one of the single most despicable, irredeemable characters in fictional history, became your only friend.
I really wanted to be a hero, you know? But I just can't.
I believed it. John believed it. Maybe Bruce did too.
friend. Someone you actually care about.
Of course. Of course you were my friend.
And either way, it's exactly what Batman would do. Against some people's better judgment, Batman believes that anyone can be redeemed. Anyone can be saved. Some people are too far gone, but despite that, Batman will always try to save them because he wants to believe in a better future for everyone. And that was proven throughout my experience of the enemy within. I believed it myself. I really thought that I could save John, that there could be a way to prevent him from ever becoming Joker. Get him the help he needed, guide him down the right path, save him from himself. But the unfortunate reality is that some people can't be saved. And no matter what Batman might want to think, the Joker is one of them. He is a universal constant that can never be changed. No matter how much effort he tries putting in, no matter how much you try to get John over to the light side, he will always fall and succumb to being Joker. It's one of the few times I can say that a forced part of Telltale's storytelling actually works in the game's favor. You want to help John. You need to help John. And a Telltale story seems like one of the places that you might actually be able to do it, especially with an ending dedicated to him becoming a vigilante and one to becoming a villain. But it doesn't matter. John is destined to be Joker. No matter what choices you make, no matter what paths you go down, no matter how much of a friend you were to John, Joker is inevitable. It's a horrible tragedy of the game that you must deal with exactly as Batman does on a daily basis. Batman is always trying so hard to bring Joker to justice and hopes and prays every single time that he brings him in that it will be the last time. That the next time he sees that pale white face, it'll be behind a certificate of sanity and a man wanting to live a better life, or just 6 feet in the ground. But it never will. Joker cannot be saved, which means John cannot be saved. And whether or not you do consider him your friend after all this time, we all know the truth. They're gonna play their little game until the day they die. They're going to be the best of friends, always knowing what the other is thinking and constantly trying to one-up each other. It's inevitable. It is the way things have to be. But we all thought there was at least a chance that things would go differently, right?
You are one messed up guy.
And then the final confrontation mirrors a vigilante fight scene in such an interesting way. The setup is pretty similar. The emotions are way different because deep down, John still wants to believe what you two had was real. But unlike the vigilante route, where you can still choose to say you were friends, in this one, you can't. The damage is already done.
But I wanted to believe it so badly. We had some good times. Didn't we, Bruce?
Yeah, sure. Some of it was fun.
I hope you'll look at that scar and remember those good times.
I love how it ends feeling kind of like the Dark Knight dynamic, where Joker needs Batman and Batman needs Joker. That twisted psychological relationship finally feels right here because you were friends. And that's exactly why it hurts. And for anyone who says your choices don't matter in Telltale games, look at this. There are basically 2 completely different episodes depending on what route you go down. That is a huge step up for Telltale, and they did a hell of a job for this game. I genuinely think this is one of the most underrated games in Batman media. Maybe even one of the most underrated games in general. And that's exactly why The Enemy Within left such a lasting impression on me, why it broke me. Because this game doesn't just tell a story, it makes you part of it. It pulls you into every decision, every moment, and it leaves you with emotion and questions that stick with you long after the credits roll. Telltale didn't just craft a game here, they crafted an experience, one where the enemy is also your friend. And that kind of relationship is rarely explored with this much depth in gaming.
Batman: The Enemy Within is one of the greatest stories The Dark Knight has ever told. It took unique spins on so many beloved characters, twisting them into something completely different or just leaving them untouched in a subversive masterpiece that always keeps you guessing and on your toes about whether or not you made the right choice. And above all else, it really made you think like Batman. Here you are, face to face with the poster child of evil comic book characters, and he's now your best friend who you want to save. While there are some aspects that are a little underdeveloped and many things they should have done differently, I can look past those small problems because of how perfect they handled the things that really mattered. An intimidating Riddler, a trustworthy Waller, a scary Harley, a redeemed killer, and a friendly Joker. These pieces came together to create a Batman story like no other. An emotional roller coaster for all characters involved that built up such an amazing world we need to see again in a season 3. Telltale, we believe in you, just like we believed in John Doe.
I do still have hope we'll eventually get season 3. I know it may never happen, but based on the articles I've read, it feels more possible now than it has in years. Ad Hoc Studios re-required the video game rights to DC Comics from Telltale, and they're now working with them. Plus, a lot of the team behind Ad Hoc Studio is made from veterans from several classic Telltale games. With Dispatch helping them put them back on the map, I think there's still a chance. And even last summer, they tweeted this that made some people start to speculate again. So I don't know if it's remotely a tease for Batman Season 3 or not, but I'm still staying pretty optimistic for the future. I seriously can't wait to overanalyze this game on my channel, eventually. It might be a while though, I still got a couple Arkham games to get through first. But thank you so much, Clown Puncher, for having me. I seriously appreciate it. And if you want to check out more from me, I just started overanalyzing Arkham Shadow over on my channel. So after this video, go give it a watch. Clown may or may not be appearing there soon, but you have to subscribe to find out. And like I always say, us nerds need to stick together. See ya.
Thank you so much for joining me, Arkham Analysis. It has been an absolute pleasure discussing this incredible game with you. Please be sure to check out her channel filled with over-analysis of all of our favorite Arkham games, linked in the description or the information card up there. With all of that in mind, thank you so much for joining me for Superhero Month, chaps. This has been something I've been planning for months, and finally getting to see it through just makes me so happy. This took a ton of work over the past few months, but I am so proud of the final products. I love the Arkham series a lot, but sometimes I really need to talk about a different game or two. And these underappreciated gems were just begging for discussion.
You're my light outside of Arkham.
My favorite part of my job is showing off my love of video games, and this month really let me put that on full display. This art form still doesn't get the appreciation it deserves after 50 years of some of the greatest experiences to grace entertainment. We're lucky every day that we still have them, and I can't just keep ignoring this massive library of potential content forever. So, thank you all for bearing with me. I promise we'll be back to Arkham in March. So, with all that said, do all of the YouTube stuff, because I need a long nap after all of this work. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later, chaps.
I was so busy looking at you, admiring you, wanting to be like you, be loved by you. I lost myself. But not anymore.